The marketplace in the dusty frontier town was alive with noise, the clang of horseshoes and the bark of traders filling the dry air.
At the center, a young Apache woman stood on display, her wrists bound, her head held high despite the humiliation. Men laughed crudely, throwing coins on the ground as if she were livestock. The auctioneer's booming voice cut through the crowd, shouting her price, testing the greed and cruelty of the settlers who gathered to watch. Most came not to buy, but to jeer, certain that her fate was already written in shame. The rancher who stood near the back of the crowd had not come for such spectacle. He was a tall, broad man, his hat casting a shadow across weathered features that spoke of years of silence and solitude. To the crowd, he looked no different from the others, a lonely cattleman with money in his pocket. But as his eyes fixed on the young woman, chained and proud, something in him shifted. He saw not a prize, not a servant, not property, but a human being whose dignity remained untouched despite the iron that bound her. When the bidding began, the crowd's voices rang with mockery. Some men offered small sums, laughing at the thought of owning an Apache woman. Others shouted vulgar promises, making the atmosphere thick with cruelty. The ranchers stood still, saying nothing, letting their greed rise and fall like the tide. Finally, when the auctioneer called for serious offers, his voice boomed above the rest, $400. The crowd fell silent. That was no joke, no careless bid. Whispers ran through the men like fire across dry grass. The auctioneer blinked in disbelief but quickly accepted. No one dared challenge such a sum. The rancher walked forward calmly, placed his money on the block, and cut the bonds from the woman's wrists. The Apache woman did not flinch or bow her head, she stood tall, though her wrists bore the red marks of the chains. The crowd erupted in laughter and mockery, certain the rancher had bought her for reasons all too common in that time. Yet as he placed his coat around her shoulders and guided her gently toward his horse, confusion spread. There was no lust in his eyes, no cruelty in his hand, only resolve. The ride back to the ranch was long and silent. The Apache woman sat upright, refusing to lean on him despite her exhaustion. The rancher respected her silence. He did not speak, nor did he try to comfort her with empty words. He understood she would not trust him, perhaps never would. But as the sun sank behind the mesas, he vowed silently that her fate would not mirror the jeers of the men in town. His purchase was not of ownership, but of protection. She was free now, though she did not yet believe it. At the ranch, life was harsh but simple. The woman, still wary, kept her distance. She ate little, slept lightly, and often stood at the edge of the property staring into the horizon, as though measuring how far freedom might carry her. The rancher did not chain her, did not command her, did not touch her. Instead, he treated her as he treated himself, with quiet respect, with room to breathe. He left food for her, tools for work if she wished, but never demanded. Slowly, suspicion began to ease into a fragile truce. One evening, a storm rolled across the plains. The roof leaked, and the wind howled against the cabin walls. The woman sat near the fire, her eyes following every movement of the rancher as he patched the roof with steady hands. At last she spoke, her voice low and uncertain, asking why he had spent so much money for her. He paused, looked at her, and said simply, "Because no one else would see you as human." The words lingered in the firelight, neither romantic nor dramatic, just truth laid bare. Days turned into weeks. She began to help with small tasks, fetching water, tending the fire, watching over the horses when the rancher was away. Though her steps were cautious, a sense of belonging began to form. She sang softly to herself at times, old songs of her people, songs that carried both sorrow and strength. The rancher would listen quietly, never interrupting, as though he too found solace in her voice. Their bond was unspoken, woven through respect rather than force. Trouble came with the soldiers. Word had spread that an Apache woman was living freely on the rancher's land, and to the military that meant danger. One afternoon, riders approached, rifles slung across their shoulders, demanding her surrender. The rancher stood in the doorway, calm but firm, declaring she was under his protection. The soldiers scoffed, warning him of consequences, but he did not move. The woman stepped forward then, her chin raised, speaking in broken English, "I am not property." "Not his, not yours." The soldiers hesitated, unsettled by her fierce gaze.
That night, the rancher knew the soldiers might return in greater number. Yet he felt no regret. He had bought her freedom with coin, but it was her courage that gave her true strength. Sitting by the fire, she told him of her people, of raids and losses, of brothers taken and families broken. He listened as one who understood pain, not as a man seeking to own her story. And for the first time since she had been chained, she allowed herself to rest without fear. The ranch did not become a sanctuary overnight, nor did trust blossom without scars. But over time, the Apache woman and the rancher built something rare on that harsh land, a life forged from respect rather than chains, from shared labor rather than commands. The town still whispered, still mocked, unable to understand. But their laughter no longer mattered. What mattered was that one man had chosen compassion over cruelty, and one woman had found her dignity untouched, her spirit unbroken. Together, they created a bond that the frontier itself could not break.